Today, the Daily Texan was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to interview the legendary Brea Grant. Brea Grant graduated from UT with an American Studies degree and then went on to become an actress. In 2020, she wrote and directed a little horror movie called 12-Hour Shift. From there, she wrote and starred in Lucky, and now in 2022, Brea Grant has come back to direct a horror movie by the name of Torn Hearts. Torn Hearts released on demand on May 20th, and it's a fantastic movie. Torn Hearts follows Lee and Jordan as they try to make a name for themselves in the country music scene. They seek the help of their hero Harper Dutch, but what happens is actually quite sinister. In all of Brea Grant's work, she always has strong female protagonists, and Torn Hearts is no exception. So now come join me as I sit down and have a talk with Brea Grant about Torn Hearts. First question I wanted to ask you is, what drew you towards the script of Torn Hearts when you first saw it?
Well, I directed a movie called 12-Hour Shift that came out in 2020, and I had a meeting with Blumhouse afterwards and kind of told them what I was looking for. And the things that draw you in as a filmmaker, and I like things set in the South. I like things with women. I love it when it's not all just, a lot of genre things are a lot of teenagers and people in their early 20s. I wanted something with women over that age or people over that age. And then they brought me the script and I was like, wow, this really combined all of these things that I really wanted to make. And then in addition to that, I mean, I'm from Texas, so I have a country music past, I think, as we all do. If we grow up in Texas, at some point in time, someone's listening to country music. And for me, it was both my dad and my mom both had, my mom had more of a country music phase, I would say. And then my dad liked old country. So that was also really interesting to me, is combining music and horror.
And I bet you listened to a lot of the classics then growing up.
Yes, I did listen to a lot of classics, but I listened to a lot of 90s country too, because I was the right age for it, because I graduated high school in 2000, and by 95 I was into like punk rock music. But before that, I was into it was when they, it was kind of a country revival of like pop country. So the Garth Brookses, the Reba McEntires of the world, like I was into it. And when I was like 7th, 8th grade.
So do you have a favorite country music artist? I mean, if not now, just who was your favorite when you were younger or now?
Oh, that's a great question. When I was younger, it was Garth Brooks. When I was around 6th grade, I really thought maybe I'd marry him one day. And then as I got older, I've kind of gravitated more to alt country. And some older country, like Townes Van Zandt, stuff like that I consider like in that country world. I like those bands.
So a lot of the movies you've worked on always have strong female leads, and I was curious, when you're looking at characters on a script handed to you, or when you're writing your characters like you did in 12-Hour Shift, is there a process to developing their story arcs that you do with your actors?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. So the writing phase, I feel like, is different than the directing phase. I feel like these are all sort of like different worlds. But of course, in the writing phase, you hope that you're starting at one place and ending at another place with every character in your script. I mean, I wish that was the way in real life also, that we always ended up having some sort of great arc or realization. We don't. But in the world of movies, I think in order for audiences to stay engaged and to enjoy your movie in any way, you need that arc. But once I get into the prep phase as a director, I actually go through every scene. And I used to do this as an actor too, but as a director, I go through every scene and I go through all the characters and I write where they start emotionally, where they are, what their belief systems are, and where they end within each scene, because I think that is just as important as the arcs over the course of the film. Because we know, with something like Torn Hearts, you have this person who has belief one way, and by the end she's doing things to achieve that belief that she never thought she could have done otherwise. But you have to track it to get there. And so for me, finding those before I even walk in is helpful. And then I talk to the actors about it, and I do a lot of improv on my sets. I let the actors play, find the arc themselves. I always try to get the lines as written, but then I let them go off book and play and do it on their own, because I find that a lot of times actors get stuck with the words, and they're not quite finding the emotional range and the emotional arc they need to find. And so this was another one of those where I ended up using mostly what was written, but in order to get there, I think it's helpful to let people play with the scene in whatever way they need to.
So how much of Torn Hearts then is improv? Is there any? Because I know you said you stuck to mostly the script, but
It's mostly, yeah, Torn Hearts. I mean, 12-hour shift has a lot of improv in it. Like, I mean, and you can tell like there's a lot of lines that are, honestly funnier, make me look like a genius because they're way funnier than anything I've written. But most of Torn Hearts, we would play with it. We would do as written. We'd play with it, and we'd go back to as written. So by the time I did the cut, it ended up being everything mostly from the page.
okay.
But I think those moments of playing are just really important in creating the world.
Yeah, and especially in terms of like working with the actors, allowing them to do that. You're right; it does help bring out the actual script at hand. And what was the environment like on set with your actors and your crew and everyone there?
Just very, very toxic. I'm just kidding. It was great. It's New Orleans, so everyone's very nice. The actors were excited to be there because it was, in the middle of the pandemic. Still, I mean, we shot in July, August of 2021. So in New Orleans. So it was hot and rainy. And I don't know how New Orleans manages to combine those two things in the worst way possible, but they do. But then also you have this amazing crew down in New Orleans, just really solid crew, know what they're doing. So that makes my life a lot easier. But yeah, it was great. And I think, we're all coming out of or working. I have worked during the pandemic and I worked quite a bit, but being able to be on set, I think I had some of that feeling of, oh, this is such a privilege to get to do this with my life and to it's an honor to get to be here during a time when, not everyone is getting to work. So I think we all kind of had that attitude.
That's nice to hear. And with a lot of the scenes y'all were doing, what would you say was your favorite scene to direct, whether it be an action scene or just a normal character scene?
I mean, I like both. So yeah. I mean, I love working with actors. That is something that I think when I first started as a filmmaker, I didn't even view that as I felt like I needed to learn everything else because I already knew how to work with actors. But now I've sort of circled back around, and that is really my favorite thing, is bringing out these great performances and working with actors and getting to really play. So there is a scene where we had one whole day to shoot this scene that happens around a table where right when Lee and Jordan first come to the house and they're kind of trying to figure out what to do. And there's so much nuance within all of their performances, and there were so many pieces of it. So it was a bit of a puzzle, but then also just getting to work with these amazing actors. And it felt like we were doing theater. I mean, we were just doing the same scene all day long. And it was, for me, I love it because I feel like I get to watch these different parts and play with them and get to really shape the scene. So I love that kind of stuff. But then I do love a good fight scene. And one thing I really wanted to do was have the two of the main characters fight each other. That it's not something we see very often. We don't get like a full-on brawl between two women in movies very often, unless they're like trained fighters or something. So I wanted to have this messy, intense, emotional fight on the backdrop of some music. That was really fun, which we shot across like a day and a half, something like that. And it was, we had great stunt doubles that were super helpful in getting it, but also Abby and Alexis, who are the two leads, they're athletes. So they also were able to do a lot of it, but we had a lot of fun, like prepping that, getting through that process. And then for me, again, it's a little bit of a math equation and like coming up with, okay, this will look best here, this will look best here. And I started as a math major. So I think that part, my brain sometimes goes back to that and likes to do the calculations of this is exactly how I can piece these Tetris pieces together.
Well, the math really showed through the fighting scene because that was intense. There was a lot of moments with movement, but I also liked how you were seeing a lot of the character and their motivations and how they were feeling in that scene. Like you said, what was your goal in getting these characters to open up to each other? Was this something you wanted to engage the audience with, or something just more for the story?
You mean opening up to each other emotion, like throughout the scene? Or
throughout the scene
like,
where they're fighting, they were opening up to each other a lot.
They need to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the case with a lot of friendships, is that you don't actually say, or personal business relationships, any sort of relationship. There's a lot of stuff you're holding back about. So to have this scene where they literally say everything they need to say and be very honestly kind of mean to each other. They actually get meaner as it goes on. I wanted that to feel like a real turning point for their relationship. They would never normally have said these things if they didn't feel like they had been pitted against each other by Harper and then encouraged to say what was on their mind by Harper.
Mm-hmm. And so what was the most difficult scene to direct then?
The most difficult scene, it's never the scenes you think it's going to be. It's always the scenes that you're like, oh, we have an easy day. And like, no. Because it was probably, so my very first movie was called Best Friends Forever, and I shot it in West Texas. And it's a road trip movie. So it takes place in a car. So I have a fear of shooting in cars. And that fear came right back out, and I'm completely justified because that was a hard day where it's just them driving the truck. Nothing complicated. I mean, it's complicated in that, we have to have a follow car and like, I can't be there with them. And then just the setup is difficult. But even then it gets more complicated because it's hard to communicate, but also it was really hot. And that's the shooting, and that was our choice. We shot July and August in New Orleans. Like, I don't know what we thought was going to happen. But it was really hot. And one of the actresses had a little bit of a rough day because of that. And I felt really bad. So that ended up being the roughest day. Besides the day we got shut down for COVID, that was probably the roughest day.
Yikes. I can't imagine that.
Yes. Yeah.
This one's more of a silly question, but throughout the movie, it's mentioned consistently about strawberry rhubarb pie, and I'm curious if you've ever tried strawberry rhubarb pie and if you'd recommend it.
Oh, yes, of course. Have you not had strawberry rhubarb pie?
I actually haven't. I didn't know that was an actual common pie flavor until I watched this.
It is, and it's great. My stepdad loves rhubarb pie. Loves strawberry rhubarb pie. It's good because rhubarb is, maybe don't quote me on this, but I think rhubarb is poisonous or something unless you do a certain thing to it. I believe that's rhubarb. But yeah, I do love that. I love pie. Pie's great.
That's true. Do you have a favorite pie flavor?
Not strawberry rhubarb. I don't love a strawberry pie, but I like blueberry. But honestly, this is so lame. I love pumpkin. And I wish they had pumpkin pie all year round. I wish I could get that or sweet potato. I think those are my two favorites. And I wish they had both. I wish they had sweet potato outside. They don't have that in Los Angeles at all. No one's serving sweet potato pie. And I wish they had pumpkin all the time. It's such a great flavor of pie.
I have to agree on the blueberry and pumpkin for sure.
Yeah, those are good.
So you've written, directed, produced, and acted. And I'm curious, of all of those or any roles you've ever filled in on a movie, what is your favorite thing to do in terms of helping with the movie? And it can even be multiple, because like I know 12-Hour Shift, you both wrote and direct.
Yeah. My favorite thing to do is napping, and I wish I did more of it. Just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, so I started my career acting and moved on to directing and writing maybe about 10 years ago. And that's really where my heart is now, is the directing and writing. I mean, I do produce as well. And I think most directors will probably produce, even if they're not getting the credit for most jobs. But yeah, I think at this point in time, my heart is really in the writing and directing space. And I think it sort of just depends on the project. And there's certain things I don't think I'm right for as a writer, and there's certain things I'm not right for as a director, but sort of finding those and finding where I fit into those projects is my favorite.
That's good. It's good to hear. And especially, you're growing big in the horror genre. It's no secret that you're becoming one of the masters of horror in modern times. And I'm curious, what draws you into the horror genre specifically? Like, what is your favorite part of it? And alongside that, what makes a horror movie scary to you?
Ooh. I started in the genre world as an actor. So that sort of brought me into that world, but I already liked genre movies at the time, and not limited to horror. I love action movies. I love sci-fi, and horror definitely included. But I think acting in them, I realized that I liked doing that, and I liked the freedom it gave me. And it felt like you got to do a bunch of different kinds of movies all in one kind of movie. I got to do drama, I got to do comedy. And then I got to do horror, which is this a very fun sets to be on, great community of people who are generally very nice. And like, maybe we're all working through demons. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it. It feels to me like it's the most level group of people that I've ever worked with, are people who make horror movies. So, I mean, I think there's just like a ton of reasons. And for me, it's like, this is what I consume. I watch horror movies. This is what I'm going to watch when I sit down at night. So it makes sense to me to write within that world, because I'm a fan, and that, and the world is really fertile. It allows me to tell really interesting stories. I think a lot of horror is doing really interesting things politically and taking really interesting, cool stories, and saying something about the world, but putting it within a horror context. And so it's easier for people to understand and digest and make sense of. I just think it's a great place. And what makes a movie scary? Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the person. There's things that are really scary to me that are not scary to anyone else. But then there's certain things I actually don't find super scary that's in a lot of horror movies. Like, I was just telling someone where I was like, it's hard to find a ghost movie that scares me at this point. But I am scared of a demon movie. So I think that like it kind of goes back. It kind of just depends.
Is there like a specific demon movie you could point at that you'd say, yeah, that's the scary movie. That's the scariest movie to me.
I mean, there's a lot. I literally just watching this show called Evil last night. Have you watched that?
I have not heard of Evil, actually.
It's on Paramount streaming, and there's a part of it that really scared me because it had like some demon stuff in it.
Yeah.
But I also think human beings are really scary. Like there's a lot of things that is this really the humanity is scary.
That's for sure.
But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of movies. I'm trying to think of the last movie that like really like scared the crap out of me, and I can't think of one. I read a lot of books, and I find those are a little bit scarier these days than movies.
I could agree. I get behind that.
Yeah.
And so in Torn Hearts, there's definitely this element of, not idolizing your heroes and understanding that your heroes are people and they make mistakes as well. Is there a story you have in your life where you used that to put into the story of Torn Hearts? As in like a hero you met that you were kind of disappointed in meeting?
Oh, interesting. No, I mean, I think I entered it from not so much their point of view of meeting their heroes as the point of view of the aging starlet.
Oh, okay.
I think I identified with all of them in some ways, but I definitely identified with Harper, and being in an industry that can be really unkind to women and kind of starts to treat you like crap and pit you against each other, which is where I sort of identified with them. No, I have to say, I've met a lot of people who I looked up to, and they've been pretty cool. I feel really fortunate. I don't really have a person like that in my life. And I mean, there are people I'm definitely nervous. I get nervous being around, but I haven't had any sort of interaction with a hero like that I had to super fan out about.
And then on note of the ending of Torn Hearts, like you just pointed out about being a woman in the film industry, did you take your experience as that and put it into the ending? Because I really liked the ending and how it shows off what being a female creator in the country music industry is, and how you can just have songs taken from you, basically.
Yeah, it's a dark ending. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that just really drew me to the script overall, is this sort of the way you claw your way up in an entertainment industry. And I think country music has so many parallels with the film world, but I'm obviously speaking about the film world. And then things get taken away from you because someone decides that you're, a crazy woman, quote unquote, or you're too old, or whatever the thing is that that means that they can have the work that you've done. But I mean, my goal was like, I think all of them were coming at it from a way where it's like, this is what they've been taught to do. This is how they've been taught to achieve within their own industry. And I didn't want to judge them for that. I wanted to show that they aren't playing outside the rules. They're actually doing exactly what they've been told. But the industry it's a trick. We're all being punished regardless. Which is not a happy ending.
But it's a very powerful ending.
I think it's a truthful ending. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And very important to show people who may not even realize that.
Yeah, some people didn't like that ending. They were.
I was like, that was the best way to end that movie.
I think
considering
so too,
the theme of
I
it.
think there's a happy ending, but it's a happy ending in which the women all turn on each other anyway. So I'm not giving anything away by saying that. I don't think so. I don't. I think that it's the most truthful ending with the way the industry is right now, and maybe in 40 years someone will remake this movie and they'll change the ending and it'll be happy because women have achieved parity, and that will be great, but I just don't think we're there yet.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and it's very reflective of our times.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how did, going into your experience as a filmmaker, how did UT play a role in aiding you get to where you are now?
Oh, interesting. Well, I didn't go to school for film. So I went to school for American Studies, but college was very important for me. First of all, I've met all my best friends there. I'm still best friends with those people, which I think is very important. Second of all, I'm from a really small town in East Texas, and I needed the education of being in a place I didn't know, meeting new people, having to be in charge of myself for once, because the place I came from, if I was screwing up in school, someone was going to call my dad. And I'm sure they did. Whereas like at UT, I felt like, you have to go in and you're in charge of yourself. And there are obviously things that UT helps with along the way, but I think college for me was an education in how to live in the world, because I didn't quite know how to do that. And it instilled in me a lot of really good study habits, for lack of a better term, because I still, through my whole career, I study. I have to study. I have to do research. I spend a ton of time essentially writing papers, quote unquote, but they become pitches, or writing things. So I think college was massively important for me, and definitely made me who I am and made me able to achieve the things I can do.
And for college students out there, what advice would you give to anyone looking to do what you do and follow in your path?
Oh, wow. Following my path. What advice? I mean, I think people should just, this is not good advice, but I think people should do it, go and do it. I think a lot of people wait a long time to start acting or start trying to make movies. And I think there's so much you learn in those early years that, maybe your student film isn't going to win an Oscar, but I think you learn so much in doing it. And I think filmmaking is so much about making mistakes, and just putting yourself out there to make those mistakes. Go ahead and fail a lot. Especially women, I meet so many women who are like, I want to be a director. And I'm like, then go be a director, because you're going to spend a lot of time making a lot of things that no one ever sees. And you need to put in those hours, because it is about getting those hours in so that you feel confident enough to start making bigger and bigger things.
Mm-hmm. And what's next for you, if that's something you can share, depending on the projects, but where can we find you next?
Yeah, I don't have anything that I can just talk about at the moment. Call me back in a week or something. But no, people can find me. I do a podcast, which I'm always trying to plug, which is a book podcast called Reading Glasses, that people can find me any week, any day of the week there. Not really, Thursdays. And besides that, watch Torn Hearts. That's the main thing.
Yes, 100%. It's on video on demand now. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me on this. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, I like your Suspiria shirt.
Thank you.
Suspiria shirt, or what is it? Is it like for the new one? Or is
no,
like
this is for the 1977 one. This is has Tan's Academy on the back. Nice. I can't really turn, but
That's fair.